Bright for might. Before commencing this impromptu canter along the coastal quarter and suburban fringes of my hometown's nearest westerly neighbour, I'd elected to avoid its dually apportioned carriageway for broadly self-propelled perambulation, and instead risk a profanity-ridden lecture from self-righteous road hogs. This evasive measure stemmed from my instinctive caution of any other restless rollers and ramblers who might be making nocturnal use of this unlit shared space, including carbon-conscious commuters time-trialling home after an arduous night shift, joggers dragged from their beds before dawn by loosely leashed hounds, early-rising parents performing multi-point turns with e-powered bendy buggies, and the odd mute swan returning to Widewater Lagoon, following their off-season vacation at a luxury lodge located in the picturesque nature reserve's nearby trailer park. Moreover, my concerns were compounded by the distinct possibility that these numerous mobile hazards could be joined by a sizable portion of pathological pavement pounders training for this coming Sunday's Brighton Marathon. The colourful parachutes belonging to a parade of becalmed kitesurfers served as airborne pace-setters during several moderately strenuous efforts within an otherwise solidified base-tempo hour. Nighty Hyde. And sticking to the subject of seafront marathons, for an extended encore of yesterday's unplanned prance to Lance, if only for pointlessly trivial perspective, the combined average finishing time achieved by last year's gender-binary winners of Brighton's prestigious event was 2 hours 39 minutes, which converts to an overall speed of 10.9 miles per hour over the race's fabled 26.2-mile distance. A shade under 30% slower than I managed on 2 wheels and around a half-length course, albeit with a few stationary pit stops and traffic-induced pace penalties. Sights and sonics. Caution! No stopping here except for buses, bellowed a regulatory sign, nestled within the shelter of its referenced vehicle's appointed lay-by, located at the east end of my hometown's bustling high street. In mulling this misplaced placard over during at least a dozen subsequent methodical strides, I hoped for the sake of public transport's future profitability that not too many prospective passengers would follow its implicit instructions, like the motorists it was directed at, by walking straight past their boarding point before attempting, and failing, to flag down a succession of virtually empty double-deckers from several furlongs up the road. In the absence of 2 fully charged Jabra 85T earbuds, alongside the one-dimensional spatial sound generated by an iPhone 16e's ultra-low-profile stereo speaker system, the most taxing challenge of this therapeutic stroll was to mentally compile and recall a more fitting playlist for the occasion than Apple's autonomous DJ. The final movement of Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony is a piece I'll often wheel out when maximum motivation is called for, featuring a majestic main melody that commences and concludes the work in a resounding major key, and is interwoven with central sections which bristle with equal exuberance and grandiosity. The music's triumphant motifs are vividly characterized by sweeping scales and resonant chords, played predominantly by the orchestra's string and brass instruments. These sections also alternately carry the work's heroic theme each time it reprises, with added sonority and contrasting textures. However, performing this symphonic masterpiece in my head over a cacophonous chorus of angle grinders slicing perished render off a terraced cottage in Shoreham's old village proved far trickier than humming my way through Johann Strauss's Radetzky March a few corners later. when only the feathered philharmonic's vociferous starlings, chirping out a late Easter service of psalms and sonnets from their rustling rostrums, threatened to throw me off key. Noteworthy wander. Another musically moulded meander to a personalised playlist of ageless classics, and again, one compiled by the neurally trained content curators residing within my own organic cortexes, as opposed to Apple's user-conscious waveform analyzers. Even when tastefully complemented by the hushed murmurs of a mercifully mild east wind, barely strong enough to tease St. Beaufort's emblematic weather vanes into half-masted dances beneath the mellow rays of Earth's golden shepherd, positive energy didn't flow quite as freely through a pair of wheel-weary legs as it had during yesterday's purposeful plod about town, though an equal number of audible intrusions from life's atonal symphony almost drowned out my mindful interpretation of Fauré's heavenly requiem. This historic and universally acclaimed choral work received its premiere performance in 1888, though the talented French composer carried out periodic revisions to the score until well into the 20th century. Like most classical requiems written throughout the early Baroque and late Romantic eras, the piece derives both its form and lyrics from the Judeo-Christian religion. Almost every one of its 7 highly contrasting movements harbours a hauntingly beautiful melody, rendered by a choir or solo vocalist, who are accompanied either by a full orchestra or chamber ensemble, depending on the arrangement. Each is certain to enchant any attentive listener with its lilting chords, dramatic key changes, and broad range of dynamics, whilst all have since become famous in their own right, by being used to invariably momentous effect within a host of contemporary cultural settings, including as incidental music for major films, popular television series, and documentary features, as well as one particularly memorable commercial to celebrate 2 decades of otherworldly gaming on Sony's PlayStation consoles. Were I an exceptionally skilled improviser, I might have found a way to seamlessly accommodate the resonant clamour of bells emanating from St. Mary's Church Tower within the Requiem's sublime Pie Jesu, though the former's strictly structured descending scales, despite evoking a suitably spiritual atmosphere and having equally profound ties to humanity's most sacred traditions, clashed with the soprano's mellifluous tones.